Joining me now from Washington, D.C., member of Iran's parliament in exile, National Council of Resistance of Iran, and a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Ali Safavi. Ali, why now? Why are we seeing this aggression from the Iranian regime now? Is it because the sanctions are beginning to bite?
Well, thank you very much, Graham, and thank you for inviting me to your show. First of all, remember that this pattern of behavior is nothing new. For the past 40 years, the Iranian regime has been the main source of mischief, crises, terrorism, and aggression against its neighbors and against Western countries, as it has been, of course, suppressing its own citizens to the point where it is the world's leading per capita executioner of its own citizens. As to why the escalation in the recent attacks and aggression, obviously the mullahs feel they are very vulnerable at home, with demonstrations continuing in 2018 against the regime, people calling for regime change, with the organized opposition now as potent, as capable as ever. And of course, as you said, the sanctions are beginning to have an effect. So the mullahs want to project a sort of a position of power, a posture of power, basically to force Western countries, and in this case the United States, in backing down and perhaps willing to come to terms that the mullahs wanted to agree to.
The goal for the United States vis-a-vis President Trump is twofold. One, to make sure that Iran never gets nuclear weapons, and two, to stop Iran being the #1 state sponsor of terror around the globe. Those are noble goals. Those are goals that the United States have been wanting to achieve for many, many decades now, frankly. And you do have to look at this from that prism. I think you would agree. At least since the 1970s, we have to look at who we're dealing with and look at the track record, as you duly pointed out. But the problem is that going to happen without some sort of violent overthrow of the mullahs, either internally or externally?
Well, I think that, yes, it is true, as you say, that Western countries, even the United States, has at least said in words that they want to deal with the Iranian regime's export of terrorism, their quest for nuclear weapons, their ballistic missile program, whatnot. But in practice, I must say that the past 40 years, up to the point of the new administration in Washington, the policy of the United States has basically been one of appeasement, by one of giving concessions to the regime in Iran, and of course turning a blind eye to its aggression against its own citizens and its mischief in the Middle East. I think it is the first time in 40 years that you have an administration in place that is not going to let that happen. And I think that the policy that the president has pursued is a very, very prudent, effective policy. This regime, remember, understands only the language of power and force. Yes, of course, the stated objective is to change the behavior of the Iranian regime, but as a Persian saying goes, a viper never gives birth to a dove.
All right, so to that end then, Ali, then what should be the U.S. response? We hit them with a cyber attack? Okay, that probably hurts, and maybe it did some great damage, structural damage to the Iranian regime. But from a PR perspective, from a geopolitical perspective, we have not hit them back militarily. Should there be a military response, and soon?
Well, I think to your point, when the Iranian regime's intransigence goes unanswered, then you will see the attacks on the tankers in the Persian Gulf. You see the attack on a U.S. drone. However, ultimately, I think that the United States, first of all, could stay the course. There's a lot more room left. More sanctions need to be imposed. I think the decision to sanction Supreme Leader Khamenei and his office was an excellent decision. I think that Rouhani and other officials of this regime need to be sanctioned. I think petrochemical and gas industry needs to be sanctioned. But I think the key factor in all of this, as you pointed out earlier, is the domestic situation and the internal resistance. I think the United States should publicly recognize, first of all, the right of the Iranian people to overthrow this regime, and secondly, recognize the National Council of Resistance as the democratic alternative to this regime. Remember that we have been fighting this regime for 40 years, 120,000 of our members and sympathizers have made the ultimate sacrifice to bring freedom to Iran. We have an organization within Iran. We have a parliament in exile abroad. We have a woman as a leader of our movement. And of course, we have a 10-point plan. So I think that the administration should think about working with the Iranian people, with the Iranian resistance, to make change come to fruition in Iran.
Freedom for the Iranian people, true freedom for the Iranian people, decades overdue. Ali, thank you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.